Continuing on the same timeline, I'm going to move my, after the bird leaves, I'm going to move my work area and import my worm. So here's the worm. We're going to put this into the timeline as well. And with this, we're going to move it as we work on the puppet pin of the worm, because we want the worm to move as well at the same time as we're animating. So first what I want to do is just set the scale so that it's a little bit smaller. This is really just going to need 3 pins. And now what we're going to do is we're going to animate the worm using our puppet tool. So let me get back to the default. I'm not going to start way off screen because, and you don't have to either. It can just like, fade in or whatever you want to do, or just pop into the screen. But basically using the puppet pin tool, we're going to make it move across the screen. And if you get the hang of it, like you can have it start off screen, start squirming and coming into the screen. But if you are not able to, or if it's proving to be a big challenge, don't worry about it too much. So again, with the worm, we're gonna go to Effects, Timeline, in the layer within the timeline. Bring up the mesh. Go to the deform and shift select or select all of our puppet pins so that we can see them. There they are. And we're going to do this about every, I can't remember if it's like every 5 or 6 frames, but let's try every 6 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The way worm moves is body, head goes first. Well, basically worms, snakes, any of your, slimy, slivery things. So the head goes first. I'm going to keep the positions of this because, and basically when you move the head, it stretches, but these two don't move. So that's why we want to manually add the keyframes for those two. And then a few frames later, your body, middle of the body moves, and the other ones get keyframed because they're not moving. You get keyframed manually. And a few frames later, I'm doing 3 frames, the body follows. So you get this movement. See that? And we want to again manually add the other keyframes. And you can go about every 3 or 4 frames. So I'm advancing about 3 or 4 frames and then moving the individual segments. You may have to kind of, because the puppet pin tool is acting weird with this particular worm. You may have to, again, just maybe, no, it's got enough, like increase the density so that it doesn't move like that. But it ends up being pretty cool because you get like a little difference of in move. So you're just basically repeating the thing after that first initial movement. It looks like the tail doesn't really want to cooperate unless I do something with this. The other reason is because I'm trying to make it go really fast across the screen as opposed to like not so fast. So in order for you to kind of resolve something like that, you may have to put like another pin there so you could just control that. Then again, like I said, see how it's moving better, but there's going to be more. And if you add the pin after the fact, because it's just staying there, it's going to be weird, number one. But number two, it's just not going to, forming the image. So I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to stick to my 3 pins. So head moves, the middle part moves, and here the back part kind of catches up to the rest of the body. Um, and you just keep, again, like I said, doing this until your worm finishes walking, so to speak, walking or worming its way across the screen. And if you come to an issue like this, like what I'm having, you can easily, I mean, if you, the easiest way to actually probably fix that is to just restart. But I just want to finish the animation so I can show you all the final way it looks. So it's taken 9, 10, 11, basically 2 seconds for it to cross the screen. Oops, we don't move that, just the head first. Keyframe the other ones, move a few set frames, and then move the middle section of the body, keyframe the other ones manually, and then move that last part. Keyframe the other portions. Again, if you kind of get this, you can start, as far as moving it and really taking off with this tool, you can easily do the worm coming from off screen and going into the screen. But let's see what the final, well, the animation looks like. So it's a little, odd with the movements. And again, one of the ways I could solve that, like I said, is just to add another pin there. Um, and if you realize that, it looks funky after the fact, you can add another pin, but just make sure you do it in the beginning of your motion. So in the beginning, make sure your frame marker or play mark is at the beginning of your motion, and then you can, holding down shift or using one of these to go over to the next keyframe. Just make sure that your keyframes are all there, even if they're not moving, because otherwise it's going to kind of mess up the um, the way it moves. And you can refine it as you go along as well. If you need to update or make changes. So I'm just refining this because I don't like the way it's shaping. That extra pin really helps, which is weird because all this time I've been doing this tutorial. It really didn't need that third one. If you're confused visually which pin you want to use or which pin to select, you can select it through your timeline and then move it as well. All right, so after refining it, this is what Worm is going to look like. So again, I can refine this a little bit more. I can start again with 5 pins instead of 4, like put one here as well and just have more control over it. But again, the downside of that is that you're going to have to basically work with more keyframes. But, basically this is kind of what I'm looking for the worm walk. It's just something where it's reminiscent of how a worm or a snake or something would move. And again, the trick to this is to first do the head, then do the middle because the middle catches up with the head, and then do the tail because the tail catches up with the rest of the body. And you just repeat that over and over. And this is also just, again, from catching worms in my teenage days before going fishing and stuff like that. And I'm sure you all have seen worms in the sidewalk and stuff like that. And you kind of figure out how they move. And snakes move similarly as well as eels and anything long and tubular um, in the animal kingdom. So I'm gonna save this, and we're gonna move on to the final one.